Welcome to State of Africa with Minnie Tagwire. I am sitting here today with my guest, Francis Mufambi, who has written this article about the survival and extermination of Africans if we do not do something about where we are today. So, Francis, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Alright, we're going to talk about what you said about the way we are at the moment as Africans, our future, and that our future is quite threatened because maybe we should start with that. Why did you say that we are going nowhere? Like, we are just surviving.
Okay, I think Africa, to begin with, is suffering from colonial hangover. They have not actually contemplated that we are now independent and the colonizers are no longer our masters. So you can see many of our countries in Africa are still believing that the colonial masters are the ones who are their messiahs. For instance, if I can give you an example, I can talk about the Francophones, whereby we have African countries with their reserve banks in France. We are talking about African countries who still believe that maybe if they are going to follow electocracy, which is actually a European model for democracy, then naturally they will become developed and the economies will become better. So basically, we can see that as long as we do not have our own thought, as long as we cannot actually have our own ideologies, because if you read people like Fanon, they say, if a people wants a revolution, then they should actually have the revolution with the revolutionary theory. Then the Africans do not have that revolutionary theory. For Europe to develop, they had to have European Renaissance period.
Sure.
But Africa now does not have such kind of a period. We are not united as a people. We do not have a common purpose for surviving. You actually have one of the African countries, for example, Morocco, applying for European Union membership, instead of actually it getting into African Union membership.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you can actually see that we as a people put together, we do not have a purpose to survive. You can actually find out, I can use maybe the Zimbabwean example. If you ask one Zimbabwean which currency they prefer much, they will not tell you about rand, they tell you about the US dollar, you understand? So this is actually a clear example of people who do not have self-respect, people who have lost self-identity, and people who have actually lost taste of themselves.
Okay, but my question is why are we in that state? Why are we emulating Europeans and Americans more and not becoming our own, our own people?
Okay, there is a concept that has been actually cultivated in Africans, that one that an educated person is the most civilized. And actually, if you see the curriculum that the Africans follow, is not a curriculum for education, it's a curriculum for miseducation. It's a curriculum that gives Africans a self-hate, because what those curriculums that we use tell us is that Africans are not civilized and did not invent anything.
Did you read Things Fall Apart?
Yes, I did. I read everything up wrote by Chinua.
It's funny that you're talking about education and civilization, because the fall of Okongo in Things Fall Apart was the introduction of education, whereby everyone just believed that, okay, we are now educated, we are civilized, we can't be traditional anymore.
Right, so what you can realize, actually, maybe we are using a very good example. Chinua Achebe is one of the writers who actually said when Europeans came, they asked us to close our eyes in prayer. And when they had the Bible only, they asked us to close our eyes in prayer. As soon as we finished the prayer and opened our eyes, we had the Bibles as Africans, and they had the land for the Africans. And this is actually what you can see happened between the master and the slave, the servant relationship between Africans. Again, I will use the same example that you used. If you see the relationship between Africa and America, for example, it is that of a slave and a servant, of a slave and a master. And to use Chinua Achebe's words, he said, a slave and master relationship is like when the master is sick, the slave will visit the master to see how he's feeling. But as soon as the slave becomes sick, you wait to recover so that he can go and tell the master that I was sick. Understand? So we can actually see that Africa still remains an exploited land. As long as actually we still believe that those people who we call professors, those people who go to universities are the most civilized, then we are losing it. What we should actually maybe try to understand is the best person who understands the African culture is the most civilized. The best person who understands African history is the most civilized.
Okay, with time I've actually realized that the word civilization might mean different things to different people. So maybe according to you, what does civilization mean to Africans?
Right. In my own understanding, I believe that civilization to an African is a person who understands the African question. When I talk about the African question, I mean a person who understands Africa's history. A person who knows actually that Africa was the motherboard for inventions. Actually, a person who knows that the Europeans that we have today were the last to be civilized. The Europeans only got civilized between 1482 and 1586. So we cannot talk about them as actually the most civilized. But what happened is when they
civilization is the oldest.
Yes. So when they came in contact with the African people, they copied some of those things. If you remember very well, if you read writings by Professor George James, he talks about actually the situation whereby African civilization or Egyptian civilization was stolen by the Greeks. Actually, it's now called the Greek philosophy or Greek civilization, but it was actually stolen from Egypt. I can give you an example of people who are said to have stolen it. You remember Aristotle, you know about Plato, right? Socrates. Those people actually, they land in Egypt. If you read their history very much, they land in Egypt. And some of them, especially Socrates, was killed for bringing foreign education. That was Egyptian education. But now, simply because now we have been colonized, everything about us has been stolen, we believe that civilization that we believe came from Europe. I can tell you about things such as medicine and engineering. Medicine, geometry and engineering started in Egypt by the Egyptian priests. And those things were taken as secrets. They were written secrets, which people actually were supposed to have used. The Africans should have used that. But what happened is, after the invasion of Alexander the Great in Egypt, they stole those things and actually presented it as if it was European civilization.
Welcome back to State of Africa. I'm sitting here with Francis Mfambi, and we're just talking about what we need to do as Africans to survive in this modern world. Okay, so reading your article, I learned a lot about things that I've always thought about and never had anyone to speak to about them. And I think one major point you put across was how much we get from the West after everything that they've done to us. Like, does it make sense? So you literally said that the West doesn't love us. And then I'm looking at it, I'm like, every time we have a problem, the West comes to the rescue. Every time something is going on, we get messages of condolences, what and not. We have foreign aid workers, we have Doctors Without Borders. We have all those things that Western countries are doing in Africa. And yet you say it's not enough, it's not love.
Okay. To begin with, actually, let me take you back to what I believe in our African culture. We believe in our African culture, we believe that when you die, even the person who has bewitched you will come and pay their condolences. So this is the same thing actually that Europe and let me say maybe the imperial powers do, right? When we talk about those things that they've done, we are talking about the people who have colonized us. We're talking about the people who have handed down our ancestors as wild animals. We're talking about people who have enslaved our ancestors and built state-of-the-art cities. Paris, we can talk about London, they built it using our ancestors. So basically, I do not actually see where we can call this love now. How have it immediately changed actually to become love? But at the same time, these are the same people who have stolen our resources, who have taken everything from Africa to build their own countries. So basically, if you go back to, I'm a disciple of Professor Dambisa Moyo from Zambia. She wrote something about aid, a book called Dead Aid. The aid that we're getting actually from Europe is not helping Africa any little. you can actually see it's actually causing problems instead of helping Africa. Let me actually say this using actually the statistics used by Prof. Dambisa Moyo. She said Africa got, post-independence period, Africa got nearly $1 trillion in aid. But if we are going to be asked to show us what was used, what
did the aid do?
In Africa, we cannot actually see anything on the ground to say maybe this is actually what the aid has helped us to do.
Okay. So I'm thinking that we have like the French President Macron, who's really young, and I'd like to think that his way of thinking is different from those generations that you're talking about, that they colonized us, they enslaved us, they did all this. So the change, doesn't that say something that people have evolved, we have grown up? It's no longer, it wasn't Theresa May who said, let's do colonization, but she's the prime minister now. So maybe her views are much more different from the older generations.
Okay. What I need you to understand is that President Macron is an individual, but the capitalism is a system. Theresa May is an individual, but capitalism remains the system. So what you need to understand is, no matter actually who comes into office, that person will be an individual. But as long as capitalism remains the major ideology for the Europeans or for the imperial powers, then we cannot actually go anywhere. We cannot talk about them being the game changers. What you need to understand is these people actually only come into office to go forward with what actually was laid down by their colonial masters. If those people were changed, the first thing that they were going to do was to come and compensate Africa for colonialism. You can talk, you can listen to them actually talking about compensation maybe when there is an African problem. Let's say maybe there's a genocide in Africa. They will tell you you should compensate those people. But if you are going to them and tell them about a compensating slave trade, if you are going to talk to them and say you need to compensate colonialism, then no one will actually maybe will actually listen to you. So you can actually see that those, the imperial powers, they only love Africans as long as that African believes that nothing about what happened in the past should be spoken about. Okay. But by the time you come and try to correct those wrongs, for example, you talk about land. At one point, actually, one of those British queens gave Mugabe a knight
well, the queen, it's still the same queen.
We need the land back. It was taken away from him, and actually they had to say, okay, you need sanctions. You understand? So the same applies to South Africa. South Africa is asking for land now. They're saying, okay, we need to expropriate land without compensation. Land that was stolen from us. It's actually not their land. From my understanding, the land in Africa belongs to Africans. Therefore, we cannot actually be told how we can take it from the colonizers. We need to take it anyhow. We are dealing with criminals. A person is stolen. You can't actually go and ask a person who is stolen for your
okay, but for me, it goes back to generations again. We are a different generation. We are sitting here talking about things that happened in the past. And then now we are talking about the people that are living on those farms today are not the ones that took the land from us. And we are not the ones whose land was taken from. Okay, it's our forefathers, our ancestors, but you and me were not there. And those guys at the farms were not there as well. And that's the argument right now, that we did not take the farms from you, we inherited them.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you call an offspring of a snake?
Oh my God. No. Okay.
Okay, so actually, according to what I understand, an offspring of a snake remains a snake. So basically, it's not a proper argument for them to tell us that it's a crime that was committed by their forefathers. Even the Bible that they brought says, even God will punish people to the fourth generation, you understand? To the fourth generation for sins that were committed by the ancestors. So basically what we're saying is, okay, your ancestors committed crimes. We are not going to treat you as criminals, but we are only asking you to move away from our land and you take our land. If you want the land, you come and get it at our own terms. Not actually you dictating to us to say we need to get the land this way or that way.
Wow, okay. All right, we're going to go back to the survival thing. because I think we just left it hanging there. What do we need? I think you talk about a strong African state in your article. So how do we get there to a point whereby we've actually created something that we can be proud of? Because when I look across Africa right now, there's not one country that I'm like, oh wow, they have a good government, they have good running water, there's electricity, there's this and that. It's like nothing is working everywhere.
Okay, maybe before I go through the government that I thought I think maybe Africa should have. I need to tell you about what you asked me before, especially about what the aid is bringing us. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
You can see actually that corruption in Africa is a result of aid. The leaders actually will not use that money responsibly because no one can account for it. It's not actually part of the national budget. It's something that just come from nowhere, and they can even pocket it. It's the same money that is used by people to sponsor terror. African governments, some of them, they sponsor terror, and they use such kinds of resources. It's actually the only thing that is causing lessons among Africans, because Africans believe that if there's going to be a cyclone, then America is going to give us
come to the rescue.
This country is going to come to our rescue. So we need to understand that aid is not actually good to Africa. We should even completely ban it and have other means to survive. We should actually have our own self-reliance mechanisms.
Will that make us better people?
That will make us much better people. Why? Because firstly, it will encourage hard work. Hard work is the one that was encouraged by capitalism in Europe at the beginning of their renaissance.
Yeah.
That is the same thing that we want. It will encourage thought. People in Africa are now lazy. They are lazy to read, they're lazy to think. That's why actually we are being taken advantage of. You can see actually that the only book that was translated into local languages was the Bible. No offense, no maths, no science book was translated to local languages.
Oh my God! I've never thought of that.
Yes, it's a really important point to look at.
Okay.
Right, then you said, what kind of government do we ought to have in Africa? What kind of a strong state do we ought to have? Right. Firstly, Africa do not need electocracy. Elections are not an indicator of democracy.
Welcome back to State of Africa. We are sitting here with Francis Mfambi, the guy who wrote Survival or Extermination for African People. So we're just talking now about his views on elections, and I don't think I like what I'm going to hear. So let's hear it. You're saying Africa is not meant for elections.
Okay. Basically, I was saying electocracy is not actually the way to democracy.
Okay.
If it works in America, then it doesn't necessarily mean it works in Africa. What we need to understand is, for Europe, for example, to develop, what happened? They went through a lot of things. They went through slave trade. They went through colonialization. They went through dictatorship. For instance, I want to tell you that Germany became a much better country under Hitler. France became a very much better country under Napoleon. Italy became a much better country under Mussolini. But now, these people, they cannot allow you to go through the development stages that they went through. So I believe that mechanisms for Africa's development are different from actually mechanisms that made Europe to develop.
Can I just say, after the World War II, there was really nothing in Germany. The infrastructure was destroyed. If you look at Holland, it was nothing. People had to work a lot to rebuild Europe after the World War II.
That's not my understanding of after the World War II. What was destroyed after the World War II?
Hitler, Mussolini, they caused the World War II.
Yes, they did. Yeah, however, being aggressors actually cannot take away the administrative abilities from them. You need to understand that after the Second World War, definitely the built infrastructure was destroyed. But we did not take the intellectual capacity to build such infrastructure. So, in as much as what was on the ground was destroyed, the mechanisms, the machines, the mind to build such things remained there.
Do you know how much Germans resent Hitler today?
I don't know.
I do. That's a past that they do not want to talk about. They don't go there. They've swept it under the carpet. They've moved on.
And do you know why?
Why?
Because of this term that we call international community. Not actually that they do not want German supremacy. We will be actually fooling ourselves if we think that the Germans no longer want to be on top of the governing mechanisms in the world. No, they actually want to be superpowers. That is definite. However, they know actually what can come out of it from the international community, which is the previous imperialism. You understand? So I believe that the Europeans need to understand actually the national politics, whereby the countries should self-determine. People in Zimbabwe should solve their own problems. People in South Africa should solve their own problems. They have means and ways to solve their own problems. Africa before colonialization lived in harmony. There was no civil wars. There was no actually genocide. For example, the Rwandan genocide. We have never.
Can I beg to differ? Look at the Mfekane, Chaka.
Yes.
Look at how we fought against each other, raiding each other's cattle. Yeah, all those
And
things.
do you know the
We had
contribution of
tribal wars. We had.
Do you know the contribution of the Boers in Mufekane? So you go back to the same point to say the Europeans are the ones who brought guns to Africans. And when they brought guns, the guns were the ones actually which were tested against each other, and it caused ethnic and tribal wars. It's not actually Africans only fighting among themselves, but Africans were now fighting among themselves simply because the European was here and they had taken part of the land, and the Africans were now fighting for the remainder. Just like today, Africans are fighting in xenophobia. It's not actually because Africans hate each other, but the bigger chunk of our economy has been taken. And who took it? It goes back again to those people. So we need actually to have a very broad perspective when it comes to what the colonizers or external forces have played into our affairs.
Okay, so how do we get there? How do we get to a point whereby we can actually have these conversations and set goals as Africans and be like, okay, this is the kind of state we want to build, and how do we do it? I think we need a strategy, because I don't think we have a strategy. What is the African Union doing?
Okay, the simple thing is we need the United States of Africa, not the African Union. We need a United States of Africa with a single
So all African countries should come together.
Yes. Then African countries should also make sure that they expel everyone who was co-opted by the Europeans. This is what happened in China. They expelled Chiang Kai-shek for the Chinese Revolution to be a success. This is exactly what happened in Haiti. They expelled Batista for the Haitian Revolution to actually come to a success. So the Africans need to understand that we have black people among ourselves who have now been co-opted by the imperialists, and these people are the ones that I refer to in that article as the black colonialists. We replaced the white colonialist with the black colonialist. And actually, if you read Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Decolonizing the Mind, he said some Africans simply stepped into the shoes of the colonial masters.
Yeah. In your article, you mentioned that the struggle failed, independence. Like, we gained independence, but we are not really independent as African countries.
We gained political independence, we did not gain economic independence. So basically what we are saying is the leaders that we have today, or majority of them, they were envying the lives and the lifestyle that was being lived by the white colonialists. So the reason for them to go to the struggle was for them to go and get the same cramps.
So now that they have it, they're happy.
They're happy and they don't care about the masses.
But, oh, wow. Okay, you speak a lot about how much you admire Cuba, China, and Japan. And in your opinion, why is it that China, Japan are like the strongest economies in the world right now?
Okay. Firstly, those countries that we've spoken about are decolonized. They're decolonized in the sense that they do not actually think that speaking good English is civilization. They are people who respect their traditions, they are people who respect their cultures, and they build their economies based on their culture. They build their governance systems based on their on their culture and traditions. They are not actually the ones who would fight for foreign religions. They do not do that. They have their own systems. They believe in their own systems. They work hard for their own countries. But like I told you, we have an African who think that it is a favor to go and get a British citizenship. It is a favor to get a green book for the green card for the Americans.
Yeah.
This is actually what Africans think. They think actually Europe is much better than Africa. They would, if they were given a choice, you can actually see Africa would be left without a person.
No one.
Everyone will go there. But now we need to understand that China, they do everything using the Chinese language, and they're not ashamed of it. And a person who can't speak
And their
English is not
culture
called
as well.
uncivilized. They have their culture, they believe in it.
They
But-
still eat with their chopsticks.
Yes.
We are ashamed to use our hands to eat.
Exactly. So this is actually where you can see that we have a problem in the social and political culture first.
But for us to get to that point, what was it? Were we brainwashed because we're not really like proudly black? Okay, we say we are proud, but our deeds don't say we are proud. You're like, oh, I'm so proudly African, and yet I can't even wear African sandals.
Okay, we're given mendacides. We're given mendacides. When I talk about mendacides, I believe they are not yet established, but these are chemicals that can kill your mind. Understand? And that mind was replaced with the white mentality. People no longer believe that their ancestors are important. People in Africa now think that if your grandmother dies today, she becomes a demon. But that is not actually how it should be in an African setup. So basically what I can tell you is we were not brainwashed to say brainwash is a simple word to use. We were actually given mendacides. Our minds have been killed. So for that matter, we need to have an African Renaissance program whereby Africans are re-educated, and that means education that we were given should be taken away from us. We need to understand that we can give our own structures.
Do we need to have like a different education curricula, which, because you're talking about Aristotle, Plato, we've learned about all that at school, and it's not African philosophy. We don't have any African philosophy. So in terms of education,
there is a lot of African philosophy that has been written, but the problem is it is underpublished. You understand? Because
we don't learn it at school.
The imperialists know that they do not want you to learn that. They want you to learn any other things, but not that. We need to understand that actually to develop, to understand the African culture is more easier than to understand the European culture. They will tell you that in Africa we do not believe in women's rights. But if you can visit your history and understand that there was Queen Nefertiti in Egypt who became a pharaoh. You can understand that the struggle in Angola was fought by Queen Nzinga. We can understand that the struggle in Zimbabwe was started by Ngoyane Anda.
Spirit mediums.
We can understand that we had very good warriors and military generals such as Queen Candace who fought and defeated the British. You understand? So we need actually maybe to reach a moment whereby African history is being studied. African history is actually becoming a part of the curriculum in our schools. So only then, and only when we have a single board of education in Africa, only when we have a single currency in Africa, we can actually maybe be able to talk about moving from the quagmire that we are in.
Do you see Africa becoming united, like becoming one giant state? Well, the show is State of Africa. We are hoping to have a state soon.
Right. Unfortunately, the people who could have done that are no longer there. And the current crop of politicians that is growing in Africa is not actually based on ideological purposes, but they are based mostly on materialistic things. So we can see that maybe we had people like Ken Gaddafi, we had people like Kwame Nkrumah. Those people had the idea of making a United States of Africa. But now Africa is more divided than it was before. So when other African countries are having military bases, American military bases in their countries, then it can tell you that we are actually going for the dogs.
Wow. All right, unfortunately, this is all for today. I hope to sit with you again soon. Yeah. Anyway, this is Francis, and we had quite an intense conversation. We will put a link for his article, and then you guys can go through it. But thank you very much, Francis, for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is it for now. Goodbye.